Chairman Wilson, tell us about Senate File 54.
Mr. Chairman, if you hold on just 1 second, we're about, okay, we're live on YouTube. Thank you.
Ready?
Yep, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You have before you Senate File 54, which was an interim committee bill, ran through the Senate and out our end. I'll explain it briefly, but basically it's approval for a fee collection and special revenue count. So the top of page 2 kind of picks it up. And what this is, just to give you the sense of what we're talking about, is a sort of a statewide, we can call it almost a hub, so to speak, so that healthcare providers can access medical records on their patients from other places. So in other words, let's suppose a patient were seen at the doctor's office on Thursday and diagnosed with bronchitis, and then on Saturday they went into the ER with pneumonia. The providers would be able to access the records, a certain categories of records, not everything in the world, but and this came about in a budget footnote in the 2016 budget bill. There was a footnote in the Department of Health agency budget authorizing the Department of Health to use $1 million of reversions or otherwise unused funds to match at a 1 to 9 federal dollars that was encouraging the development of this medical record exchange. And it was put in the Department of Health because they already had a lot of experience doing that sort of thing with Medicaid records. So it went there. So since then, the project has not existed in statute anywhere. It's kind of kicking along on this budget footnote. So they just wanted to get it in statute, and especially because at this point now, it's up and running. They've got some 1,500 providers that use it, and what they want to be able to do on a voluntary way, that is to say, the participation is voluntary, but they want to charge a fee to the users to cover their costs, and that's really it. So if you look on page 2, the first paragraph just refers to the budget footnote. Then on line 11, they want to charge reasonable participation fees. Line 14, by rule. 19, recoup the department's cost. And top of page 3, a special revenue account so that the providers who are paying the fees can be assured that the money will go to the actual, upkeep of this system and not some other thing. So you'll see the fiscal note. They are anticipating somewhere around $200,000 a year in revenue. Now, it was kind of an interesting fiscal note, which you might suppose that as one of your former colleagues on appropriations, I inquired about this. So it says in the second bullet point, the estimated total operating cost is $500,000. 20% they think will be covered by Medicaid. Of the remaining $400,000, 50% will be funded using the participant fees, which would roughly be maybe $10,000 a year for a large hospital, under $100 a year for small clinics. But I cleverly noticed that there was still some money left. I said, and where is that coming from? And what the answer from Department of Health was that they currently have some other contracts for like there's right now a Medicaid only information system, and the contract on that ends in August. And so they anticipate that by not doing these other software programs or computer things that would be basically extraneous, they will not ask for any additional general fund appropriation. You may believe I pinned them down on that. So that's the gist of it. Obviously, I will answer any other questions that you have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Representative Schwartz.
That's the weirdest hand. So Chairwoman Wilson, I'm curious, my recollection when we established this, and this goes back to when we were on Labor Health Together, was that part of the goal was to get as much data as possible to make it as meaningful as possible. Will these fees, since it's a voluntary participation, do we think some people will not participate because of the fees?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Short. So, and I just want to make sure that we're not merging together two things, because there was sort of a typo carryover in the footnote about multi-payer, which this has nothing to do with multi-payer claims database as far as gathering data. This is just the ability for providers to access medical records from other providers, and it's specifically limited to things like lab results, prescriptions, radiology reports, and that kind of thing. So we had a couple of providers testify, and we did during the interim. There's, like, as I say, about 1,500 now. They're looking at 3,000. And the providers can also access the health information exchanges that are in the surrounding states. So there's one in Colorado. There's one in, or actually there are several in Colorado, Idaho, Utah, the Dakotas. They're getting ready to link with Montana, which of course will be useful considering how many referrals we have for out of state. So really the entire purpose is to improve continuity of care by having providers be able to access their own patients' information. And in fact, there's no data collected that would go anywhere else. It's only for a doctor or nurse practitioner to look up their own specific patient.
Go ahead,
Thank
Representative
you
Larson.
for that clarification.
Thank you. So Chairman Wilson, there is not a fee for providing the information. The fee comes to the provider for having access to gather the information. Is that not correct?
Mr. Chairman,
We
Representative
want-
Larson, that's, that I don't, when I didn't actually inquire, I don't think you pay a fee based on, it's not like a usage fee. Well, I have to put in $1.25 and now I get out a record. I think you basically have a subscription for a year. And so whether you're uploading your patient's information or accessing it, it's more like an annual subscription type thing.
Well, and thank you. Follow up, Mr. Chairman, but I guess I'm saying, so as I recall, what they were hoping to do is to have all providers provide information so that we would have access to that information. And so it wouldn't seem logical to me that we would pay for somebody or require somebody to pay to provide the information. It's having access to the information that you would expect the subscription to provide.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, and again, we don't want to confuse this with the multi-payer claims database, which this is not. So in this, if a provider for some reason didn't want to subscribe, and they, and you don't think it will be useful for your patients to, say, have Wyoming Medical Center find out their extra reports, well, then you don't have to. But no, it's not obligatory.
Okay. And I wasn't confusing it.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Wilson, just trying to better understand this. So a participating entity is who would be charged the fee. So that would be Larson's doctor office or the Wyoming Medical Center. That's who would pay the fee. Now, as a patient, I can just go from my doctor to the next doctor and bring the information with me, or I can request one doctor to share it with the other doctor and not pay the fee. So I'm trying to understand why this is needed. And the reason I ask is because if we set up, currently it's a voluntary system, and if we start charging fees for a voluntary system, will the participating entities just drop out of the system because they can get the information through another avenue? And now we've saddled the Department of Health with an expense that they don't have the money to pay for. And so kind of two questions there.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters. So there's an advisory board that is made up of the providers, and they all seem to think that this is very doable, that the value that they gain is worth the cost. You know, certainly in the context of Wyoming Medical Center's budget, something like $10,000 for participation in this is really de minimis, you know, and the same for $100 for a doctor's office. The advantage, you know, and certainly now, yes, as a patient, and so the patient does not pay. But if you have had the experience of, you know, many of us, I guess we're all old enough to have done this, back in the day when you would want someone, you know, Dr. X to see your x-ray from the hospital, and you would have to go to the hospital and you'd sign these forms and they'd give you the x-rays in these big folders, and then you'd have to carry it across town, and then you'd give them, you know, I mean, it does not very timely often. And so this way, the ability for, and especially now as you've got clinics that are, you know, that are participating in the hospital or out of state or by telehealth. Let's say the person at Wyoming Medical Center wants someone at Billings Clinic to look at the neurology report. You know, this can all be done in real time rather than getting people to sign things and mailing them off or driving up to them or whatever. So the feeling of the providers is that this just improves quality of care, and they want it.
So, Chairman, how did they come up with the estimated operating cost?
Mr. Chairman, I would assume because they have been running this since like 2016 or 2017. So that's probably what it's been costing them. And they're just at the point now where they would like to not take it out of their own budget. They would like the providers to cough up. So I think that's how they're calculating it.
But I take it they didn't provide you the information of how they came up with that figure.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't actually, let me just look and see if I have something from the fall. I don't think I have, let's see.
You know if ETS monitors or takes care of the equipment?
Mr. Chairman, I do not know. Certainly,
I guess my question is,
I don't know.
if it costs less, or if they collect more fees than what the costs are, or if it doesn't raise enough, what's going to happen?
I suspect that they will just, Mr. Chairman, that they will set the fee at, you know, every year if necessary in an amount to cover the cost. Because obviously the Department of Health, I mean, they get value out of it because, and the reason that it started with them is because they have Medicaid enrollees. So obviously you know, we have a lot of Medicaid patients that they're using this for. But I mean, I'm certainly in this day and age, they don't want to be caught with a fee that's not covering their cost. So the advisory board has got the folks from the Hospital Association, the Medical Society. Let's see if I have who else is the Primary Care Association. So it seems to me they actually have a fiscal subcommittee that Mr. Bowley is on. You all know him, of course, and so my assumption is that I mean, it's in their interest to set the fee at a rate that covers the cost.
Okay, I hope it works.
So do we all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have a motion on the bill?
Do
Is there any
pass.
public comment? Ryan, is there anyone else who wants to join in? Go ahead, Rip Simkiner.
Well, I was going to say, subject to public comment, move to pass.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan. There's nobody else with their hands raised in the waiting room. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we will close public comment. Moved by Representative Kenner, seconded by Representative Larson. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on Senate File 54, statewide health information exchange codification. Representative Kinner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Schwartz,
Aye.
Representative Simpson,
Aye.
Representative Stiff,
Aye.
Representative Walters,
Aye.
and Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
7 aye, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good evening.
you too. Okay, let's go to Senate File 32. What did we come up with, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a second to pull that up and to grab the amendments. Representative Larson can always explain things better than I, but I really need to practice to be as eloquent as you all, and so I'll take the lead here and he'll save me. So we actually had 3 amendments from the Senate. As you recall, this bill is really just simplifying things with water rights and trying to adjust with current technologies and processes. So I'd like to first look at the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. And I would suggest to you that Senator Kinski just simply found another section that we needed to address. And so he brought it in and did just that. We totally concur with Amendment number 1. He put in emails instead of just regular communication mails for addresses. He put in electronic means. So they have the ability, when they fill out the application, to say, yes, I prefer electronic means, which is just the right touch. And so that amendment was really very straightforward, and we support it completely. So grab amendment number 2. Can I direct you to let's do second amendment number 1 first, because it just simply is it just does some housekeeping amendments to the first amendment. So it was good too. So we got rid of those 2. Okay, now I'm on the Committee of the Whole, amendment number 2. And again, it was just some better language. One thing he did do there is on lines 16 through 20 of page 5, he left all the newspaper advertisements back in. We had removed them and he put them back in. Representative Larson and I, probably given the situation where we're shifting, downgrading to just regular mail, we think it's okay to leave the newspapers in. So a little less efficient, but still perhaps the right step as we completely phase out newspapers over time. So really, those 3 amendments are acceptable to us, Mr. Chairman. So then we go to Mr. Kennedy's suggestions. So if you go to the engrossed version of the bill and drop down to page 6, at the very bottom of the page on line 20. So we just eliminated registered mail and put in regular mail. We've talked about electronic means, and on line 20 at the very end, see the black, if the permit holder cannot be reached by mail or email. Mr. Kennedy suggested we eliminate the rest of that sentence, or if the address or email address of the permit holder is unknown. That's what he suggested, we just eliminate that one line in the middle of that sentence. Because basically it's somewhat redundant, because the first sentence says, if you can't reach them, well, obviously one of the ways you can't reach them is because you don't have their address. And so it's a little bit redundant. So that would probably be their only suggestion. Just for your information, Mr. Kennedy also had one other suggestion on page 7, but he suggested that if you can't reach them, we might want to send registered mail, which doesn't make sense to us, because if you can't reach them, you can't reach them, and you probably don't have the address, and so that there's no one to send it to. So we would recommend we pass on Mr. Kennedy's second amendment. So really, the only thing that we have is, do you want to eliminate, just simply for clarity? Representative Larson is kind of that way. He likes to have things perfect. And so if we were to make this a perfect bill, it would eliminate on line 22, starting with the word or, finishing the rest of that sentence off in the first 3 words in line 23. So that would read, by email, skip down, the state engineer shall publish, etc. So it's really up to your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, whether or not we exercise an amendment just to clarify what, merge those 2 sentences into one.
Okay, before we do anything else, why don't we go to public comment? And you can let in any attendees that would like to come in. Ryan, and did you get that amendment, by the way, Ryan?
Yeah, I got it, Mr. Chairman, and I just let Mr. Kennedy in.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Representative Simpson's comments there. One of the reasons that the conservation districts would like to have certified mail inserted in that language is this is notification for default, which would result in essentially a loss of a property right, a priority date. And there were some board members who still wanted to see registered mail, but in an effort to cut costs, certified mail is almost 4 times less than registered mail. It's proof that something has been sent to the party if there is some issue arising later on. And I might suggest as a compromise that the number of times that it was published in the newspaper be cut back to perhaps 1 or 2 rather than 3 times. I realized that they did not respond to a regular mail notice in the case where they didn't have an email, but I also realized that lately regular mail has been somewhat irregular. I actually received a bill from a government entity about 8 weeks after it was mailed here just in the last few days. I was aware of it and had already paid it before, but it had arrived 8 weeks after they had mailed it. And so we would suggest some sort of trackable notification. And with that, I'd welcome any questions you all might have.
Any questions? Go ahead, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kennedy, just for clarification, if we're in the engrossed copy, you'd be on the bottom of page 6 in line 21. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, the language that I proposed was on the top of page 7 after website, insert notify the permit holder by certified mail. And actually, my apologies to Representative Larson and Simpson. At this point, I don't even believe that return receipt is necessary. Just proof for the state engineer's office that it was sent to their last available address.
Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Stith.
So we kind of, sorry.
No, just Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Kennedy, how do you handle the situation if you, as provided here, you just don't know the address of the permit holder But if you're still, with your amendment, you'd still be obligated to send them a certified mail to an unknown address. How does that work out?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
there would be an address of record because there was a request for a permit filed, and at a certain point, there's a duty on the permit holder to notify someone of an address change.
Go ahead, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then Mr. Kennedy, going back, rather than putting your language on the top of page 7, I think it's more appropriate to change on line 21 at the bottom of page 6, that registered mail to certified mail. And then to achieve what you would like, which is that trackable documentation that it was sent. And so then you would say, if the permit holder cannot be reached by certified mail, so you have that trackable mailing, then it would be advertised on the website and in the newspaper. Would that accomplish what you're desiring?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
that's correct, sir.
Representative Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, in all due respect, we can't put it up there because there is no discussion. We just eliminated registered mail above, and there's no discussion about certified mail whatsoever. So to throw in certified mail, if the permit holder cannot be reached by certified mail, there's no provision that he ever had to do it. So that one just won't work. So really the challenge here, if they cannot be reached, we've already mailed a letter to them, or we've already emailed, we've done our best, and for some reason they're not responding, then the default is to place it on the state engineer's official website. If we go back to registering and mail, that's really counterintuitive of what we really wanted to do here, is simplify.
Representative Larson.
So I don't argue with Representative Walter. We could, there's nothing preventing us from putting certified in there instead of registered mail. My question then, and that kind of maybe comes back to Keith, is then would that require us to say that we've tried certified mail, or email, or is it saying we have to do all three, or just one of the above, or how would that read to you as a conservation district sending there, the state engineer's office sending that back out?
Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is that, and in the interest of efficiency, that the certified mail would be an intermediate step after the regular notice on the bottom of page 6, before publication and publishing on the website. And to be very forthright, I don't know how soon the state engineer's office sends these default notices to the permit holder prior to this 3 months before the revocation would occur. Because as the statute reads here, those notices would be published in the paper 3 months before the permit defaulted.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So then if we kind of go back to your plan A, and we say that if they can't be reached, the engineer shall publish the notice of default on their website, notify the permit holder. And the only reason we're notifying the permit or we don't know that they'll get notified. We're just making an attempt to cover our hind end so that we got a record to say that we tried to do it. Is that correct? Yep. And so
that's correct.
And so then you could have it, the default that is published on the state engineer's special website, and we send out this certified mail, and then it's advertised in the paper. And Representative Simpson and I, Mr. Chairman, as we contemplated that, we just was saying, well, if they're actually making an effort to make contact with him and they don't have an address, that seems to be fruitless. But I understand with a little more sympathy what they're trying to do, and kind of changes my opinion that's fine. It certainly would help accomplish that. So, but I think that having it on the tail end rather than up where we scratched out certified, I agree, seems to make sense. We could put it there, but I think that it's better downstream. I guess that's what we vote on.
Okay. Anything else, Keith?
No, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all.
Okay, any other public comment?
Move the bill.
Moved by
Second.
Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Kinner. Do we
So,
have
Mr.
any
Chairman,
amendments? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would make an amendment for your consideration that on page 6 or on page 22, after email, strike the remainder of that line, and then on page 23, delete through holder is unknown, and keep one of those commas there, Ryan. And then on the top of page 7 on line 1, after website, comma, notify the permit holder by certified mail. And now we understand that they have an address of record that they would be using. Notify the permit holder by certified mail, comma,
Sam
and
Larson, is that registered mail or certified mail?
certified, I believe, is what was what I understood they wanted to go to.
I thought they wanted to save a few bucks and go by registered mail.
No, it's the other way around, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
And so that would be the amendment as I propose it.
Okay, does everyone understand the amendment? Representative Schwartz.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Representative Larson. Mr. Kennedy suggested that given that 3 weeks was unnecessary for a newspaper, did you want to include that? I don't care.
No. I think that I think that time is coming and we've got to get there, but I think in this amendment, that might be another amendment that we'd want to consider. I wouldn't put it in this amendment.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Chairman, I might suggest a proposed friendly amendment to the amendment, which would say to the permit holder's last known address.
I love that.
Okay, got that, Ryan?
Yeah, I got it, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we divide the amendment and do the stuff on the bottom in lines 22 and 23, and then do the addition of the new stuff in a separate amendment?
That can.
And Mr. Chairman, the purpose is I'm just not as convinced that we're not running in a little bit of a circle on the second half of that amendment when we can't find the person, but now we're going to mail it to them via certified mail. And I would submit that we should actually go back to page 6, line 12, and return some of that language to certified mail, because the real cost savings to me is to go from registered to certified. And so if we return the language up there to certified mail, get rid of the return receipt and some of that, and then go down to line 22 and reinsert, instead of registered mail, reinsert certified mail, then because we're talking about we're trying to find them. We've done everything we can to find them. And then if we absolutely can't, that's when we get into this website and circulation and whatnot. And so then to think we're going to send it certified mail to last known address, that would have taken place earlier, is just my opinion. So that's why I'd like to divide it, do the simple part first, and then maybe make some clarification on the second half of the good representative's motion.
Representative Larson.
So maybe before we divide it, I don't know that, if you don't mind, let's carry this conversation on a little bit further, because I sense that nobody's opposed to going with the certified mail. It's just the process. When do we go by certified mail? And I think the discussion is do you do that preemptively or as at the end? And I think I think that Representative Walter is saying we preempt it by doing it in the initial process. And I think what I would say is we've gone through the normal process. We can't reach them, so we're covering our hind end, and we're posting it on the engineer's website, and we're going to send out a certified mail, and just to do that because we don't think we're going to get an answer. So I really just think in the process is when we want to do it. And so am I reading that right, Tom or Representative Walters?
Mr. Chairman, I fully agree. It's just a matter of where it is in the process. And to me, it just seems somewhat confusing to say at the bottom of the page, we say we can't reach them. We've tried these other methods. And as one last ditch effort, we're going to publish it in the newspaper and put it on the website. So if we haven't been able to reach them previously by mail and email, what makes us think the certified or any other kind of mail will get to them one last time? And so I guess if we have the trackable mail, which is really the whole goal here, certified mail is trackable, then it's provable that it went out. But yeah, I guess I'm not that hung up on where it is. It just, to me, seems odd that we couldn't find them yet. We're going to suddenly find them to send it at the same time we're putting it on the website. That's just the internal argument I'm struggling to get over.
So, Mr. Chairman, no, go ahead, Clark.
Mr. Chairman, I support Representative Larson's amendment because I think it would result in a fewer number of certified letters having to go out, because by putting it on the back end of the process, you're only sending certified mail to those people for whom you sent a regular letter and an email, and had the email bounce back as undeliverable and had your letter come back as undeliverable. So you'd have a lot fewer certified mails with Representative Larson's amendment than with what Representative Walters is suggesting, I think.
Representative Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important we hone back into what section we're modifying. This is when someone submits an application to construct something, for example, a head gate or reroute a ditch or something, or a canal, and then they don't ever do it. So their time for construction has expired. So this is within, I don't know the exact time period, but 2 or 3 years. And the state engineers have just followed up saying, hey, you didn't ever do what you said you were going to do, therefore we're going to cancel the permit. That's all this is. This isn't a water right. This is just, you didn't do what you're doing, so we're notifying you. I think Representative Larson's amendment as is acceptable. These happen very few occasions. And the fact of the matter is we're almost always going to have an accurate address for those just because it was recently applied for. So I think we're acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, I've been convinced. I'll withdraw my notion, not motion, but notion for dividing the amendment.
Okay, back on the amendment. Ryan, you got it?
I believe so, Mr. Chairman. Let me just double check on the language that was inserted during the friendly amendment on page 7, line 1, after website, comma, notify the permit holder by certified mail to the permit holder's last known address. Is that correct?
They're saying yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? That motion carries. Back on the bill. Any other amendments?
Question on the bill.
Question is amended. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on Senate File 32 engrossed water permit notice requirements as amended. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
7 aye.
Okay, gentlemen, now let's talk about tomorrow and Senate File 64. Who wants to present? Because we'll have, unless Evan really wants to do it, we'll spread it around a little bit.
I do want to do it, Mr. Chairman. I need to practice. I'll be glad to take both of these bills.
Okay,
You have to save me if I get in trouble, but other than that, I'll do the introduction.
So when Simpson's up, let's take a break.
so, the one thing that I wish that we had, and maybe you could shoot an email to Don, and any one of those folks that testified, so you could send it to, but my question is, what are the other impacts in our budget cuts to communities, cities, towns, and counties, so that we've got maybe something a little more concrete that we can discuss as a justification for going back to the original JAC position. I just think that would be helpful.
Is,
Mr. Chairman, Reeman's email had a considerable amount of information in there, which I was looking at earlier. That might be helpful.
when did that come to us?
Mr. Chairman, this is
Uh,
Brian. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Did you, have you guys gavelled out? Is this meeting still, do you want it live on YouTube?
We can go off. We're done.
Great.